After making a video recently about grip and technique, as well as a video a couple months ago about what a beginner drummer really needs gear-wise, I want to offer something else along these lines. Today we're going to talk about what does a beginner drummer need to practice. We've literally talked about everything else but this. So I'd like to offer a specific practice track for you if you're a beginner drummer. Here are the exact things you can begin practicing as you're coordinating your hands, coordinating your feet, developing those skills and technique. And the best thing of all is that all you need is a pair of sticks and a practice pad. Welcome to the Non-Glamorous Drummer, where we're all about giving you the non-glamorous tips and tricks to help you grow as a drummer. If that's you and you're new to the channel, I hope you'll subscribe. Alright, so part of the inspiration for this video has been advice that I've seen given to beginner drummers online in various forums, etc. All too many times I'll hear somebody say something like, learn all the rudiments. You know, if you want to be a drummer, start practicing all the rudiments and learn them really well and whatnot. And that really bothers me. For some people, that's a good thing. It's great to learn the rudiments. I mean, it's not going to do you any harm to learn all the rudiments. And maybe if you want to go the classical percussion direction, you want to play snare in a symphony, you want to do drum corps, yes, you need to perfect all your rudiments. But if you want to be a drum set player, you don't need to start by drowning yourself in all the rudiments, because that can be discouraging and it could even be counterproductive towards your practicing if that's all that you're doing. So I just want to dispel the myth that you need to learn all your rudiments in order to be a drummer. Sure, we can come back to all the other rudiments later. We're just going to start out with a few core building blocks of drumming, some basic rudiments that you do need to know, and that will be very helpful towards your playing as you start playing the drums. So I have a pretty simple answer to the question there in the title of what does a beginner drummer need to practice, and it's really just some of these basic core building blocks of drumming that we all need to be very proficient at and that we can always continue to improve at. So these things that I'm going to give you here today aren't just things for beginner drummers. Yes, you need to learn them if you're a beginner, but if you're intermediate or advanced, you can continue practicing these things, continue growing at these basic building blocks. So if you are familiar with the 40 rudiments, then you know that the first rudiment is singles. Right, left, right, left. That's super basic, and there's even jokes made about it, about how all you gotta do to play drums is play right, left, and that is a huge part of drumming, and you wanna be very solid and very good at your right, left in order to play drums well. But also we can dissect the singles even further and practice one-handed singles, just right hand, just left hand, and then put them together. So the first thing I'm gonna suggest that you practice, and this is how I start every practice session when I practice, I just start playing eighth notes with my right hand at 70 beats a minute. Here's what that looks like. Now at a tempo that slow, it's actually most difficult to play them alternating, because that feels super slow, because that's just quarter notes on each hand as they're alternating back and forth. So that requires a lot of control. And control has two main components here that we're talking about, time and dynamics. We've got to have our time solid, where each of those notes is happening with the metronome. We've got to have the dynamic solid, where each note is even. We're not playing any accents yet. We're not doing any crescendos or decrescendos yet, although we can definitely do that later. Right now our goal is just to play these smoothly. Smooth dynamics, smooth time. That way our playing literally just sounds like a metronome. Nothing interesting, super boring, just want to get it solid, because that's the first thing that needs to happen. Now my advice is to eventually practice this at every tempo that you can. Not only bring the tempo up, but also take it even slower. Slow it down to 60 beats a minute, 50 beats a minute. Super slow, because that is the extreme in control practice. It's very difficult to play quietly and very, very slowly. And it's also very difficult to play loudly and very, very slowly. So it's good to work on both of those extremes. Practice this at different dynamics, really quiet, really loud, really fast, really slow. That takes care of singles. We're going to apply these same concepts and same practice techniques towards the next two rudiments we're going to talk about today. So again, if you're familiar with the 40 rudiments, you know that rudiment number 2 is doubles. These are also pretty important on drum set. They're not necessarily used as directly and as often as singles, but they're still very practical. They're very necessary to learn. If we're playing these doubles as eighth notes, I'd recommend starting them off at 90 beats a minute, just like this. So the goal with doubles is to be able to play them very slow and controlled like this, because that requires an entirely different technique than playing them fast. As we get them faster, it turns into more of a drum roll and we have to begin using our fingers more. If we're playing doubles as eighth notes at 90 beats a minute, we're mostly just playing from our wrists. We're not even using fingers a lot. But as we get faster, you'll have to begin incorporating your fingers. Now, as we get into this, there are a lot of different, sub techniques within these that I can make even more specific videos about, but I'm just going to touch on this today. To work on that finger technique, you can practice playing, I call it the Jojo Mayer exercise, even though everybody does this. I've just seen him do it and he does it very well. So you can also look up videos of Jojo Mayer here on YouTube practicing this finger exercise. But here's just a little bit of demo of me doing it. You can do it one finger at a time to specifically work out those fingers, then add in all the fingers together. Just practice playing eighth notes or triplets or whatever you want to do there. You can even play into a pillow to increase the strength of your fingers there. Working on this sort of thing, really focusing in on that fingers will drastically improve your doubles if weak fingers is the issue causing those doubles to not really sound great. Once you get your fingers strong, it's easier to play them consistently, loudly, faster. So combine these two things. Work on your doubles, slow and fast, loud and quiet, focusing on even dynamics with each stroke, and also work on this finger exercise so you can continue to improve your finger strength so that your doubles will all around sound better. And now for our third rudiment in today's discussion. Once you've got your singles down, you've got your doubles down, those are the two ingredients for a paradiddle. A paradiddle is essentially a single and a double combined. So you've got right, left, a single, alternating single, and you've got a right, right, which is a double, and then the whole thing opposite, left, right, left, left. So when you dissect it, you realize that those are the pieces. And so that's why it's very important to have your doubles very comfortable, have your fingers together so you can play those doubles well before you move on to paradiddles. Otherwise, you may become very frustrated. Now, paradiddles are interesting because we don't very often just straight up play paradiddles on drum set. If we're playing jazz stuff and jazz fills, we can easily play paradiddle-esque fills, but if we're playing rock drums, we're not gonna play a lot of paradiddles with our hands. But when you look at the pattern that a paradiddle is, and you think about that pattern, and maybe you slow it down and move the right hand part to your right foot on the kick, then you could play a kick snare pattern that goes kick, snare, kick, snare, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare. Suddenly you've got a groove that literally is a paradiddle. And a lot of more syncopated rock grooves are very paradiddle-esque in nature. And the best way to get very comfortable in playing those and be able to just execute them smoothly is be able to play a good slow paradiddle with your hands. So start these paradiddles off slowly, then gradually bring them up in tempo. Practicing them at all these different tempos, each has a very specific benefit to it. Practicing them slowly will help with your kick-snare interaction. Practicing them fast will help with just overall hand smoothness and fluidity, and that'll translate to the kick and snare stuff too. I would recommend starting these slowly at 90 beats a minute, just like we did with the doubles, playing eighth notes. So practice them just like that, and then from there you can either slow the tempo, work on control, increase the tempo, work on speed and fluidity, but don't let yourself hit a roadblock. Don't get frustrated with them. Getting comfortable and proficient at paradiddles requires a little bit of muscle memory and your hands just executing it so you don't have to think about that sticking. One way that I think helps students a lot with this, and something that helped me a lot with this when I was first working on these, was accenting one hand. So accenting just the right hand and ghosting the left hand, then reversing that while I'm playing it, trying to not stop, then bring the right hand down and the left hand up. So here's what that looks like. What this does is it forces you to really focus on what each hand is doing and not just the big picture. And so if your brain can individually master each hand and then put it all together and have all of that, together as a whole, then it's just gonna be that much easier to execute. So that's it for the rudiments. Those are the three basic rudiments that any drummer should be very solid at: singles, doubles, paradiddles. And from there, of course, you can work on flams. Flams are very important. You can work on all sorts of other rudiments. I've narrowed it down to these three just to say these are the quintessential drum set rudiments, in my opinion, and they're very important to know. From there, you can learn whatever you want to, but learn these first. So now just a couple final tips before we wrap up today. Work on basic grooves. And when I say like a basic groove, I'm talking about very basic eighth notes on hi-hat or on ride, kick on 1 and 3, snare on 1 and 2, the Billie Jean groove, just the basic groove. Practice it at all tempos, very slowly, very fast, very loud, very quiet, just like we've done with the rudiments, and focus on getting it solid so that it feels good and it sounds great. Really, the core of today's discussion is learn these basics, these basic building blocks, the basic rudiments, basic grooves, so that then you can go from there to wherever you want to go. And one final point before we finish today, listen to music. Listen to music just as much as you practice. Spend a lot of time listening to great music, listening to those drum parts, dissecting them, and begin to interpret what you're hearing and take what you're hearing on these recordings and work on it yourself as you've worked on these basic building blocks and you're ready to go forth and make music and play drum grooves and learn parts and interact with other musicians. This whole listen to music thing is very much a huge discussion that we've just compacted here. Playing drums is playing music and we want to be musicians, not just hit things. So there's a lot to this. So I know we're just skimming the surface today and I'm just saying listen to music. That is very important as a beginner drummer. So today I've given you the core essentials, the building blocks of drumming. And the cool thing about these is that you will always use them. You will never not use singles, doubles, and paradiddles and basic grooves in your playing. You're always going to use them and there's always room for improvement. So this is the kind of thing you can work on knowing that you're always going to thank yourself for working on it and you're always going to want to continue working on it and get better at it over the years. So guys, as always, thanks so much for watching, and subscribers, thank you for your support. It's been really cool how this channel has grown a lot lately. As of editing this video, here's how many subscribers we're at, which is awesome. There have been so many new people coming on lately, lots of new comments, new interaction, new viewers from all over the place. So continue to give me your feedback and continue to interact here in the comments. So thank you guys so much for supporting what I'm doing on this channel and for joining this community as we all try to become better, non-glamorous drummers together. So guys, thanks so much. I will see you next week.